Podcast. So we'll start now. This is another edition. Welcome to another edition of the LBA Proyecto Podcast, the official podcast of the Latin Builders Association. Something new that we've introduced this year, and really with the goal of highlighting our member companies. And you know, today with us is a longtime member of the association, Hector Aguililla. Who you've been a board member now, I think, for about 6 years. Am I right?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
On the timeline. So I know we've had a lot of fun on the board throughout the years. But your real day job, you're the director of assurance and advisory services at Berkowitz, Pollack, Brant, advisors and CPAs. Bit of a mouthful. You've been there for a while. You just celebrated your 20-year anniversary, right?
Yeah, and it's incredible that 20 years have gone by since I started with the firm.
And you look the same.
I look the same.
You look the same, right?
I get that sometimes. Yeah, I wish it was true.
You're like the youngest, older-looking person I know.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for having me in the podcast. I'm excited about the podcast. I've been listening.
Which is your favorite podcast that you listen to?
My favorite podcast? Yeah. I listen to history.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of history, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, I love history too.
I love the Civil War.
Yeah.
I love Cuban history.
Right.
I don't really find podcasts on Cuban history, but I do find it on American history. So the American Revolution and the Civil War are kind of like my areas that I enjoy. So that's kind of what I listen to.
There's a couple on the history of Miami that are pretty cool, that talk a lot about like the different neighborhoods in Miami, how they got their names and stuff like that. Those are always interesting. But you know, I know that one of the things that we always banter back and forth is your travels. Because you're always, every time I try to connect with you, you're out of town. I look at Instagram, you're in another far part area of the world. How often do you you and your wife and your family, you guys love to travel, right?
We do. We love to travel. I work a lot of hours. I'm an accountant, right? I'm a CPA, and we have a lot of compressed work in the first 3 or 4 months of the year. And then later in the year also. So when I'm not crazy billing,
right.
I do like to get out and de-stress, right. And traveling is one of the things that my family likes to do.
And I think some of your travels have that historic lean, because I think recently you were in Washington, D.C. or in the Virginia area.
Yeah.
That was cool.
And that what I found is, because I have 4 kids and a wife, so there's 6 of us, we all have our own little interests.
Right.
So what I found is a good strategy is every vacation or every getaway has to have a little bit for everybody.
Right.
So there's always a little bit of a historical angle for me,
right.
A little bit of an amusement park for the kids, a little bit of the outdoors for my wife,
okay.
and then we always end up doing some kind of shopping, So
that's how you stay young, man. That's good.
If you keep everybody happy, it's a successful vacation.
Yeah. So one of the ways, I guess, that we're trying to introduce this podcast with our members and someone like you that I've known for a while within the LBA is really kind of share your experience with the LBA. You've always participated in just about every event. Your company has sponsored some events, which we're very appreciative of, and counting on for some more this year, by the way. But you just kind of give us, if you can, your general, I guess, experience, what's good about it, and things of that nature. I know you've made a lot of friends within the LBA, so if you can share, that'd be great. Yeah,
it's been a pleasure to be a part of the LBA. It's a great platform to get to know people, and to lend a hand, and for someone to help you. So when I got involved, and I hear this from a lot of new members.
Right.
It's a little intimidating at first,
right, because
we're so friendly that we become friends. So when you get to an event, everyone's hugging, everyone's talking, friendly, having making jokes, and when you're the first time there, it can be a little intimidating.
Right.
So, but right away you realize how nice everybody is, and you make friends really quickly. And it's I specialize in real estate and construction, so I figured the LBA would be a good forum for me to find good connections and to try to help. And it's every event is well attended. There's a lot of events that the LBA provides. So someone like me that works a lot of hours in January to April, I may not be able to make every event, but there's so many of them that I can always make something.
Right.
So at least once a month, I make sure that I attend something, whether it's a lunch or one of the networking events. So there's a lot of...
and you bring clients to your events as well, which is always kind of like a 2-for-1, right? You get to go to an event, but you also socializing with clients or prospective clients, which is always it's always a good thing.
And there's so many professionals that from different industries, attorneys and insurance agents and CPAs and bankers, and there's a little bit of everything. So it's a very good way to network in a friendly atmosphere.
Yeah, and you're not. I mean, the LBA is not the only thing, the only association that you're part of, because I know that you're a past president of the Cuban American CPA Association. You're with the Florida Institute of Certified Public Accountants, I think, as well, and some others. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
So the right now I'm on the board of the Florida Institute of CPAs. Mm-hmm. This is the association that basically governs CPAs in Florida.
Okay.
Right?
Oh,
and we provide continuing education for smaller CPA firms. We help them with their CPE. We help them with just connecting, sharing information. It's a great organization. It's very old. It's over 100 years old.
Okay.
You basically, if you're a CPA in Florida, you basically have to be a member. You don't have to, but
it helps.
It helps. It helps, and so it's very rewarding because it's kind of giving back to the profession. There's a lot of outreach to students, trying to make the profession better. For example, cryptocurrency came out.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you a little bit.
And you told me, and so one of the funny things about cryptocurrency is that when it came out, nobody knew how to account for it.
Right.
So the way that standards are set in the accounting world is the FASB, they come up with a draft proposal of a new standard. And then all CPAs in the US can comment on it and say, hey, I think you may want to fix this, I don't agree with this, you should do that. And through the FICPA is a great way to getting involved in making sure that our profession's heading the right way, that protect the CPA license. There's lobbying, in Tallahassee, we got a PAC. So it's very rewarding to give back to the profession because it's a profession that I think is wonderful and it's giving me and my family a lot.
Yeah. Before, I want to get into the specifics of your areas of specialty, because I know that you have a few. But I want to touch on one personal thing as well. Your love of books. You and I often compare books, particularly about Cuba and different things, but and we have a similar path. I think we both came from Cuba at a young age. I think at the same age. We were both 10 when we came, maybe different times. And your dad was a former diplomat in Cuba, and he recently came out with a book, and you were very nice to get me a copy. So I wanna plug it because I think it's an interesting read. Misión y Escape durante la Guerra Fría by Hector Aguililla, which is your dad. So kind of, if you want to just say a few words on that, because it looks to be a very interesting book.
I definitely think so. Yeah. It's really the
story.
It's my story. It's my dad's story. It's really the story of how we came to the United States, which is very unique, because he was a diplomat. He was a high-ranking diplomat. His next step would have been ambassador. Okay. His specialty was the Middle East, and so right before the Cold War ended, we deserted. We were en route to the Middle East, and we deserted in Spain. My dad asked for asylum at the U.S. Embassy, and as soon as it was granted. I mean, he was a big deal back then during the Cold War for such a high, diplomat to leave the Cuban government. So the CIA basically smuggled us into the U.S., which is a very cool kind of part of my story of how I got here. And he details in the book exactly why he became a diplomat, what his duties were, how the people that he was involved with in the Middle East, political figures that have shaped history. Wow. He knew them and he dined with them, and so it's a very interesting book. And then ultimately how we get to the U.S.
Right.
and how we were in the Witness Protection Program for a while. Oh, wow. So it's a very cool story, and hopefully anybody that reads it will enjoy it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's available on Amazon, right?
That's right.
I kind of want to get into what you do and your services you provide, because I've seen you in some webinars and things of that nature, and you have a team that provides, your firm provides full service accounting. But you mentioned earlier that you really focus on the real estate world and the construction world. One question that I have is, I always thought or think that Miami is somewhat insulated from the rest of the country economically, particularly when it comes to real estate, because the money that flows from South America into the U.S. kind of travels through Miami. So the economy in the rest of the world or in the rest of the country may be somewhat affected. But yet Miami real estate, for the most part, and we're seeing it now, is still pretty robust. One question that I have is, how from an accounting perspective, from a financial, from your side, advisor perspective, how do you protect a local property owner who is transacting with a foreign individual or a foreign company that may not have financial history in the U.S., to make sure that transactions are done, properly, make sure that it's successful, things like that. If you want to kind of touch a little bit, because I know you deal with that quite a bit. So
yeah, so that's an interesting question, and it happens in Miami all the time. There's always the know your customer, basic procedures that everybody has to have in any business. But in real estate, I think you got to be a little bit extra careful, right? Because a lot of these funds are coming from South America, countries maybe like Venezuela, where it's got a very unique political situation, right? Yep. So you got to be careful, right? You got to make sure that everything's documented. You want to understand who your client is, your customer. You want to make sure that there's things you can do, right? I think you have to do due diligence.
Right.
You can ask for bank statements. You can ask for, cash confirmations. You can ask for financial statements. You can ask for personal financial statements. You can ask for references. You can want to talk to their attorneys, their CPAs in those other countries. One of the good things about my firm is we are members of 2 global networks of accounting firms. The reason we're members of 2 is because one of them is a little bit more active in Europe, and another one is a little bit more active in South America.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a great platform to have. We share resources, we share ideas, we share clients. So if one of my clients wants to open a subsidiary in Colombia, I can reach out to my member firm in Colombia, and there's basically one in every major city in the world. So I can reach out to them, and they can help me with that particular client. So if I have a client that says, hey, I'm doing business with this individual, he doesn't have a U.S. presence, he doesn't have any U.S. bank accounts, how do I get comfortable with the transaction? One of the things I could do is I could reach out to my affiliate in, let's say, Venezuela or Colombia, and say, hey, listen, do you know this company? Do you know, are they reputable? Can you reach out, talk to their attorneys? So there's always things you can do. And I think every business needs to make sure they have the right professionals that can help them. Always ask for help.
Right.
Even if you don't think it's your area of expertise, we can always help. There's always ways. We're creative, and we've been doing this. We have a lot of clients, so it's one of the things we can do is in that regard we can help our clients in that way.
And I'm assuming that some of those foreign companies or foreign individuals, when they come to the U.S. and they're trying to either start their business or buy real estate, they look for local real estate. So the same relationship reciprocates back here, right?
Exactly. So there's one of the areas that my firm actually has a very large practice in is international tax.
Okay.
There's a lot of pre-immigration planning. It's not just a legal thing, it's also a tax thing, right? So every time we may have clients that have a headquarters in Brazil, for example, and they want their executives to come to Miami to head their Miami operations. Well, we can help them with pre-immigration planning from a tax perspective, right? And then we can help that client, and we can prepare the financial statements that roll up into maybe a public client in Brazil or Colombia or Chile or whatever.
Yeah, one of the things that in a past webinar that we've talked about, or that you held and that I listened in, you work a lot. I think your firm does a lot of advising to companies that are looking for whether it be tax retention, employee retention credit, tax credit, things of that nature. Can you talk a little bit about some of the specific services, the unique services to a certain extent that your firm offers? I want to get into crypto. I'm kind of saving that for last.
We'll talk about it.
But I kind of want to get into your meat and potatoes, your regular day-to-day services you provide your clients.
I appreciate that. So I always like to communicate our services as a platform. It's a little bit more than just typical accounting services. So we have the CPA firm, right? That's 45 years old, and it provides the typical auditing and tax services. We have a valuation department. We have a litigation support department, and a transaction advisory services department. M&A work, which is I head that department. So besides those accounting services, we have affiliates subsidiaries. We have a wealth management group, a real estate capital group, real estate advising group. And with that platform, it really allows us to help our clients in many different ways. For example, ERTC came out, the Employer Retention Tax Credit. We right away, we jumped on providing education to our clients. Webinars. This is how you do it. We can help you. This is what the tax law says. This is what it doesn't say.
Right.
And
because it's you have to, it's written in legislative tone, which is difficult to interpret.
It's not written by accountants,
right.
And so it's very hard to interpret, and many different CPAs could interpret it different ways, right? So the same thing with the PPP loans. So whenever something comes out of left field, cryptocurrency, blockchain, all that stuff, we jump on it. We form a group within the firm that really becomes experts, and then we disseminate that information.
Yeah. And you mentioned M&A because I know that's what you do a lot of, and I have a little bit of experience in that from my old Mostec days. But certainly from the perspective of incorporating, that's a difficult road sometimes, right? Because sometimes what you see in a company once you start looking into the books may not be exactly what it is. And I'm sure you have some stories. We're not gonna compromise your license by you sharing those stories, but a typical company that is looking to acquire another company, can you kind of just give an example of that path, that walkthrough?
We'll start by saying there's two sides to this. There's the buy side and then there's the sell side. Mm-hmm. Some of my clients want to buy a business. Some of my clients want to sell their business. So it really depends which way you're going, right? That's your starting point. Let's say you want to sell. The sooner you decide to involve your professionals, the better. Right. There's a lot of steps you got to take to make sure the transaction is successful and that you maximize on the value of your company. So one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes don't pay a lot of attention to is financial reporting. Yeah. And that's key in a transaction. Are your books good? Are your books in order? Yeah. You may need an audit. You may need a quality of earnings analysis. They're two separate services, but they add a lot of value to a transaction, right? It provides authenticity to your business, assurance to the buyer. So beforehand, let's say you want to sell your business, a year or two before, you got to start getting your books in order. Your books and records have to be in order. Not only that, but there's tax structuring to think about. Even after post-sale, what are you going to do with the funds? How are you going to invest it? How are you going to structure the sale? When you're buying a company, the key question is always, are you buying the assets of the company or are you buying the equity of the company? Two completely different things, two completely different outputs, and it really depends on what you want to do. Sometimes you need the equity just because the licenses come with it. Sometimes really all you need is the assets, right? And from a tax standpoint and from a due diligence standpoint, looking under the hood, is the net income really what it is? Do assets really exist? What are the liabilities? From a tax perspective, have they filed in the states that they're supposed to file? It's a very complex world, and you got to do it very quickly because these transactions typically have about 90 days to get done, right? So it's a high pace, high reward type of transaction.
And I want to stay there just for one quick second because I think that's interesting, right? Because I've had conversations with several member companies that are doing very well. They've grown. They've really kind of have grown quickly. Some of them during the pandemic, which is very admirable. And what typically happens, I think, once a company begins to grow and do well, you have those conversations with yourself and with your team. Is it the time to sell now? Can we go on to do something else? Can we take that windfall? And to your point, I think the quicker you can, not the quicker, but the more you can prepare to be in that situation. And you mentioned some of the steps, but that's an interesting angle because I think a lot of guys, a lot of companies that are doing well think, heck, somebody can come in and give us some big dollars. But if really they're not ready, once they get into a due diligence period, then they realize how unready they are, if you will.
Yeah, they suffer, and sometimes the deal doesn't go through for the simple fact that it wasn't documented. Yeah. Sometimes in our world, if things are not documented, they're not real. Yeah. Right. You gotta have substantive proof, and that's where we come in and we say, okay, we'll make it in order. And look, accounting's really not black and white. Some things are, most of them are gray. And you can push the limit. You can accrue for more, you can accrue for less. Right. As long as you have the support for it and your train of thought documented, it's a valid position to take.
And it's interesting. It almost sounds like it's an ideal scenario for a company that's doing well, even if they're not interested in possibly selling, to begin to safeguard those areas that eventually will be necessary if they do that in the event that they get into a situation. Is that, and it sounds like that's your specialty, right? Something that you guys can do.
And this has many applications. It's not just if you're going to get, someone's going to buy you or you're going to buy somebody. It could be an investor. You're just looking for an investor, a minority investor.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It could be lending.
Yeah.
Just for lending purposes. You got to have your books in order. You got to have financial statements. So it's, and like you said, the earlier you start, the better. Even if you have a succession plan, even if your kids are going to inherit the business.
And I want to talk a little bit about that, because you know as well as I do that we have a lot of family companies in the LBA. And we're this last year we had our first third generation LBA board member. So that's a company that's kind of evolved through multifamily generations. But we have a lot of family companies that the kids are now all grown up and ready to take on. I'm sure those are interesting dinner conversations. But even at that level, even when you're dealing with family, you still have to have your financials in order, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's especially with the family.
Yeah.
You gotta have your finances in order. You have to have the legal documents in order.
Right.
That's something very typical of family-owned businesses, which is, by the way, our bread and butter.
Yeah.
Most of our
Good.
clients are family-owned businesses. A lot of things happen throughout the years. Leases get signed, and a lot of stuff is verbal.
Yeah.
Shareholder loans, things like that. It's like, I did this, I did that, but it's not documented. It's not legally. There's no document for it.
Okay.
If the IRS were to audit you, then you got to start, floundering, and then you can't prove your position. So we're big fans of documentation. Everything has to have a document. Everything has to be executed. Sometimes documents exist, but they're not executed. So good professionals not only design the right plan, whether it's tax structuring or whatever, financial plan, you got to design it, but then you have to implement it. That implementation part is crucial. Sometimes people forget about that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you create an estate or a trust for a client, right? Some firms, but then they don't follow through and make sure that it's funded, make sure that all the documents are signed, and then you monitor it because the standards change, right? The taxes may change. Now your lifetime gift exemptions may change. So now that plan may need to be updated, may need to be changed. You may have to, you have an irrevocable trust, and now all of a sudden you have to change it because the laws changed. So our family-owned business clients, we deal with them for decades.
Yeah.
And things evolve and things change.
And I think one thing, particularly when you mention estate planning, sometimes you think that by simply sitting with an estate attorney, it's enough.
Right.
And all of a sudden, when those books are open, you're all over the place. So to your point, right, having the same conversation, the same long vision conversation you would have with an attorney should be had with your accountant, so that way you have that easy. And listen, I've been through it, not so much on family business, but just family inheritance and things of that nature. The earlier you can start that process, the better, because it could be problematic when the time comes to take that step.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't get it right on the first try.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They forget that they have another aunt or another kid
right.
or another business. They forgot to include the other business, and so and I would go beyond that, Gus. I would say that have the accountant and the attorney together on the table.
Oh, interesting. That's a good point.
Right. You have all the professionals on the table, because that's when really the sharing of ideas, right, and the right plan. Because I may have my own opinions about what somebody should do. The attorney might have some other opinions, and somebody else may have another. And so we all get together, we brainstorm, and we come up with a good, solid plan that everybody's comfortable with.
It sounds like planning is the key to a lot of these steps, and a lot of kind of getting your books in order. When they say get your books in order, they actually mean your actual books in order, right? So. I want to get a little bit into crypto, right? Because we talked about that not just today but before. And I know that crypto has taken a bit of a hit over the last 6 months or so. It seems to be rebounding slightly, and certainly the whole FTX situation, which had less to do with crypto, the actual blockchain angle, It's kind of like blaming the stock market for Bernie Madoff, right? Madoff. So, but one of the things that was interesting in crypto before, this crisis, was the real estate transaction, cryptocurrencies being used to transact real estate. Can you kind of just get into that a little bit? Because I think that's an interesting angle, particularly when you're dealing, back to my original question of dealing with foreign nationals or international companies.
Yeah, and listen, every time technology takes a step forward, the old world needs to stop and think about it. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Us accountants, who are the historians in the business world, we have to say, hey, what is this?
That's pretty cool, by the way. I'm a historian. I like that.
Has a historical angle. So when cryptocurrency came out, we had a hard time with it, because what is it? It's not cash.
Right.
It's not inventory. We think it's an asset. So is it an intangible asset? Is it an investment?
Yeah. What's the backup to it?
What is it? What is it? How do you classify it? How do you report it? And we went back and forth in the accounting world on how to account for cryptocurrency. Right now, the model that's being used, I don't agree with. Hector Aguililla in Miami, does not agree with the way the U.S. is accounting for cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Right now, it's being accounted for as an intangible asset.
Okay.
And it's funny because I kept arguing with my colleagues about this, and FASB, they have a standard now, which I mentioned a little while before, that is, they're planning on doing what I think should be done. So it's kind of like nice validating, hey, I think I got it right.
It was your idea all along.
It was my idea all along. But it really should be accounted for as an investment.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it is, right? It's traded. I mean, everybody knows the price,
yep.
right? It's like stock, right? So I think it should be as an investment. Right now,
so there's always visibility as to what the price is this moment.
Yeah.
Right? That's your point.
So before it was treated, or right now actually, it's treated as an intangible asset, which is problematic in my view, and I'll get a little bit into the theory behind it. When you have an intangible, it's up for impairment. So right now, 2022, crypto took a hit, right?
Yeah.
Drastically dropped in price. So now you have to impair it because it's an intangible asset. That makes no sense under GAAP. Once you impair something, you can't really bring it back up.
Got it.
But this type of asset goes up and down, right?
Right.
So now,
all the time, yeah.
with the new proposal that's out there, it's out for public comment. I may, every CPA is allowed to put their 2 cents. I'll probably put my 2 cents in there.
Okay.
Now it's going to be an investment. So now you can actually market to market at year end or a month end or whatever reporting period you wanna, and you can, either you get a loss or a gain, which is, I think, more in line with how it actually behaves.
Yeah, you're right, and how people use it. You're right, because a lot of people use it as an investment, the same way they would trade stock and things of that nature. How would you see it, though, applied to the transacting of a specific asset, right? So let's say you have a piece of land and it has a $1 million value, and that piece of land, someone agrees to buy it for that value, but that value in Bitcoin, let's say, which is the most stable of the cryptocurrencies. I'm assuming that is considerably or certainly different than you would do a traditional, real estate transaction, using dollars, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's so volatile, right, that you really got to be careful with your cutoff. When is the closing date? Right. When do you account for it? Because the minute after, it's a completely different value. It could drastically change up or down. So there's a lot of risk in I think, transacting with crypto, especially in large volumes like that.
Right.
I'll be very wary. FTX proved to be a disaster.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of regulation. It's the Wild West right now, which is very problematic, right? For investors, serious investors have a problem with lack of, oversight. And what happened with FTX is the guy was just running it like his piggy bank, right? He wasn't separating the funds. It wasn't really, he wasn't doing his custodial duties, right? And then he started using it for his own funds, thinking that I'm always going to have more because it keeps going up.
Right.
But in the real world, things go down too.
Yeah, of course.
And that's when, where do I come up with the funds now?
Yeah, I think my take on that, I mean, I agree with you, right? That was a Wild Wild West scenario where you had some bad actors that participated in that. What's interesting about crypto, I've always thought, is that the central core of the currency, of the system, is the blockchain. And the blockchain is pretty robust. unlike the Chicago Board of Trade, unlike NASDAQ, unlike the New York Stock Exchange, the blockchain has never been hacked. So it has a robust nature to it that you can store data and all that stuff. So I do think that I think it's irresponsible to dismiss it. I think eventually it'll have a more prominent place in financial markets, right?
I would agree. I completely agree. It needs to have oversight, just like everything else, right? I mean, we've had oversight over stocks since the 1920s, right. So I think if we have oversight on it, I personally think that until the governments start creating their own cryptocurrency, no one's going to take it seriously, right?
Well, the U.S. tried. The U.S. coin, which is pegged to the dollar, and it was really more of a conversion coin to convert crypto into using U.S. coin, convert it to dollars. Stuff it just hasn't really done much. Or gotten any much visibility, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's the future. I mean, I personally don't even carry cash anymore.
Okay. Look at you.
I mean, you actually, that's not true. I always carry about $20 because there's always tipping, right?
There's always tipping.
Although,
coffees are getting expensive.
Yeah. In the future, though, I think everything's going to be done, with the phone. You tap it and you're done.
All right. So we've been talking for a good 25 minutes. This is great. Thank you so much for coming in. Tell me, where is your next travel adventure? Where would you like to go before the end of the year? And what's your dream vacation? If you had to go any place in the world.
My dream vacation is Greece.
Okay. Have you ever been?
I've never been to Greece.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Greece and I want to say Egypt as well. Greece and Egypt, but I think Greece will be my next one.
Yeah.
I'm already planning it.
Yeah, good.
So my youngest daughter, she's going to be 15 in 2 years. So I think for her 15th birthday, I think we're gonna hit Greece. That's my dream vacation.
Okay.
And
what do you got planning right now in the works?
Planning right now, it's a Caribbean vacation. We're gonna hit one of the islands. I'm trying to cross them all out.
Right,
I got a few left.
And I heard that your dream vacation is the LBA fishing tournament in July, right? For this year.
I love that event.
Yeah.
I love it. It's very laid back. Yeah. It's right by your house.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And it's a good time. I encourage everyone to attend. You do a lot of business, but you do a lot of socializing and getting to know people at a deeper level, which is really
relax networking, I call it.
Relax networking.
This year we're adding a new event. We're adding karaoke night one night. So
that could be dangerous.
Yeah,
that could be dangerous.
That's going to be. We'll make sure that folks have had a few cocktails before we get into that. Tonight's event. Hector, thank you for coming in. This was a lot of fun. I always enjoy having our conversations. Look forward to reading your dad's book. If you kind of just want to tell the screen, where they can get a hold of you and all that good stuff.
Thank you. You can reach me at my
whatever you want to say. Phone number, email.
Reach me at my email, Aguililla, Aguilla @bpbcpa.com. That's a mouthful. You can find my info at the LBA website.
There you go. That's probably easier.
I'm easily accessible and eager to help. So let me know if I can't help you. I can find somebody that will.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for doing this. A lot of fun.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
All right.